Well, thank you. Welcome back to a Better Dallas podcast. And we do have a special guest today. We are here with Mr. David Lowe. And I'm also here joined with...
So Tammy Brown Rodriguez, the Vice President of Grassroots Mobilization for A Better Dallas.
Yes, ma'am.
One of the founders of this incredible PAC. And of course, Kyle.
Producer extraordinaire. And I also make funny commentary about politics. But we'll try to keep it a little bit more serious today. Tammy, you happen to know Mr. Lowe for some time.
So first of all, I want to say just what a privilege it is to be here with my friend and now Representative Lowe. We have a great story. We've known each other since 2016, and we met in politics, and it's really incredible to see the journey. Like, I can't tell you first of all, how proud I am of you to see how far you've come since 2016 and the man that you are. It's just, I am so excited for this session. You have already done some amazing things and you're just new into the game. So welcome. And we just are so glad that you're here spending time with us today.
Thank you so much. When I met you in 2016, I barely knew how to use the copying machine when I volunteered at the Dallas County Republican Party, and I got the Volunteer of the Year award, and met so many people that kind of guided me. I was really struggling with PTSD at the time, and really Dallas County Republican Party, the folks there really had a huge impact in my life, and I'm forever grateful. So thank you for having me today.
That just touches my heart every time. He shared that story when I was in his office a couple of weeks ago, and that just truly blessed me. And what's interesting is how far we can come. So not only did we meet in 2016 at the Dallas County Republican Party, but we were also working on a campaign together, and we spent a day poll greeting on a campaign and just had the best time. And so, again, to see how far you've come, and now, of course, this is his freshman year. He's an elected official, and we're just thrilled to have you here. Excited.
That's awesome. There's still hope and that's really what our group is about, is finding people that are interested in running for public office, from copier machine to the State House floor. Do you want to tell us about a couple of your first runs through to get to the State House?
So it was a marathon. It was not a sprint. I decided to run after my previous opponent killed some bills that I thought anybody and their mother would have passed. However, it was definitely an experience. The Tarrant County GOP, an employee there, actually tried to talk me out of running. So many delegates, precinct chairs tried to talk me out of running, but I was very determined to at least put pressure on my opponent to do the right thing. I lost the first primary and runoff, and then I actually looked for somebody else to replace me as the next candidate, and people were like, "David, I can't handle that heat. You're going to have to do this." And so I ended up finding nobody. So I ended up running, had to go through it all again, and I won. And it's only because of the grace of God. So it's been great.
Just for the viewers out there, what was like the biggest learning that you had between the first race and the second race? The first time you ran and then the second time.
Okay, so knocking on strangers' doors is really nerve-wracking, okay? And I knocked on tens of thousands of doors. So I really think that I got better in my messaging. I was able to hone in more on what the actual needs and demands of the voters are. And so I just kind of navigated that. Also, politics is about making connections. And people saw that I would not stop fighting even though I lost. And so they recognized that, and then I got a lot more support the second time.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question on that. Tell me about the fundraising. How'd that go? Because I've worked with a lot of candidates, And I can tell you for a lot of us, because we are the party of self-reliance and self-sufficiency, that can be the hardest thing, is that ask for money. So what was your experience with fundraising?
Well, I was outspent 8-1. I mean, Dade Phelan alone, the former Speaker of the Texas House, current state representative, gave my opponent $1 million. So it was intimidating. I actually had over 1,500 donations, individual donations, from people across the country, not just the state of Texas. I actually did not get my first PAC, Political Action Committee, donation until I had pretty much made the runoff the first time. Nobody thought I had a chance. I'm a stay-at-home dad. I literally made donor calls while I was changing diapers. And then when my baby would start crying, I would get all nervous and hang up on them. And I'd be like, I'm not calling them again. So it was tough, right? Small dollar donations to help me buy the yard signs, get the door hangers, buy the t-shirts. I feel like if you can't get small dollar donations, then the big donors don't want to donate because they're tired of being taken advantage of. So you got to show that you have grassroots support before they take you seriously.
That's great advice.
Yeah, I really like that, how you went out, said, okay, I didn't win. Let me find somebody that you think is, representative of your ideas and can win. And I mean, like you and myself and tons of other people in politics, you look around and like, well, if no one else is going to do it, let me carry the water. So that's really awesome. So how has been your time down in Austin for the first time around?
So I'm going to be honest with you. Until freshman orientation in December, when I went on the House floor after I picked out my desk, it was the first time I had ever been on the House floor since the 6th grade field trip. And so I got pretty choked up. I still go through the rotunda sometimes, and it almost takes my breath away. It is amazing. Like, I feel like it's a miracle. So it has been great. I will tell you, some of the people that I thought had horns as an activist are actually pretty chill. They say, oh, the campaign's over, right? We're all one giant family. And then some others are just as bad as you thought they were. But I'm working on relationship building. I have made sure that, and I've matured a little bit in this position, I don't call people out by name, because ultimately I need their support to pass my bills, and they need my support to pass theirs. And so it's a weird dynamic that I've really had to evolve in.
I mean, that's politics, right? I always say every day at the office, I love policy. Like, I love a good bill. I love to read pending legislation filed across the state, but it's the politics part that just eats away at my soul. So I love to hear that you're learning how to navigate the both and.
Can I brag on a Democrat real quick? Okay.
I love that.
Yes. Yeah, perfect.
Representative Ann Johnson. Hopefully she'll see this. She came up to my desk after the first week and she said, David, what are we going to work on? And I said, ma'am, do you realize how far right I am on abortion? She said, David, I will work with anybody on anything as long as we have a common goal. And that kind of was a light bulb that went off. And so respect goes a long way. She and I probably would not agree on the color of the sky, but we can work on legislation to help make Texas better.
That is so interesting because this week I had phenomenal results. I, of course, draft legislation to protect children from being sexualized in different modalities. And I finally decided I was going to reach out across the aisle because when we're talking about kids, you would think that nobody wants children sexualized. Nobody wants children abused or trafficked. That this should be like the great uniter. And I reached out to some offices that I was advised by some seasoned lobbyists and seasoned activists, even some seasoned legislators that said, just stay out of their office. It's not even worth it. And do you know that they were faster to respond to set up a meeting with me and my team for I'll go up on Tuesday? They responded immediately. They were eager to visit. They were excited about the bill that I sent them. And I had to take a minute and think, you know what, Lord? What a great moment for me to get out of the way and let, first of all, you do and you touch the hearts of man, because at the end of the day, I think our values, it's really about changing hearts and minds. That's the key. And I can't do that. Only through the Lord is that going to be available to us. But yes, I love to hear that from you.
Well, I'm just going to say that some of the Democrats, I hope they will probably take this and put it into a commercial, but some of the Democrats are more likable than some of the Republicans because at least they don't pretend to be something that they're not. Democrats are pretty cut and dry on what they believe in, and they don't BS you, and I actually respect that.
Well, that's awesome. That's very straightforward. I like that. Going right back to what you were saying about how those people said don't go into that office, kind of goes what you were saying, don't naming people by names. Those people have probably already burnt their bridges. That's why they're saying no, don't bother, because they've just been, they weren't willing to work with people on a lot of different issues. So that is something to think about if you're thinking about going in there, being a freshman, just keeping all your opportunities open, doors open. Speaking of which, you've been there for a very short time and you filed several bills, and I think as far as I can tell, they've been fairly popular. One I'd like to talk about is the tax neutral bill that you have. It's talking about, of course, that's all the rage right now is taxes are going up, up, up. And if anyone's checking their mail like I did 2 nights ago, I got my tax increases because my escrow is a little short. Taxes going up, insurance going up, and everything like that. Can you explain the bill that you filed on the revenue neutral?
Yeah, first let me preface this with something. It might surprise you, but I don't pay property taxes. I'm 100% exempt from my VA rating.
Right.
However, nobody should pay property taxes. It is the worst form of tax, and it forces people out of their homes each and every day. So I also authored a bill to eliminate property tax. Okay, so the bill that you're referring to requires no new revenue rate, anything above that, it requires a voter approval with 2/3 of the majority. No more of sending 51% to raise the 100% of people's taxes. We need to raise the threshold. You know, that is the ultimate local control right there. Allow everybody to have a say in their tax increases. I've actually gotten pushback by certain elected officials inside and out of my district because they love having the ability to jack up your taxes, and then they just say, hey, it's the state's fault because they're not giving us enough money. Well, it's local control. We need to start putting the onus back on the local government officials. Everybody loves to point to the state when they have a problem, but nobody wants to look at themselves.
So to that point, could you clarify, because I think that we certainly have a different levels of our viewers. Explain what no new net revenue means.
So no new revenue is no new revenue. As they raise the appraisals, as they raise the tax rates, the revenue goes up. Sometimes they do a little bit of a song and dance here. I want to limit government at all costs. And so I want to make sure that any new revenue that goes up, whether it's a rate or something else, that the taxpayers have a say. You know, property tax appraisals, that is a completely different topic, kind of, sort of, but they will lower the rate and then they'll jack up the appraisals, and they don't jack it up because your house is worth 50 or 60 grand more. It's because they got more money they want to spend.
Well, to that point, there is in no world where within 1 year the value of your house doubles, right? So they're saying, oh, these house values are twice as much, but you're not going to be able to get that on the market. They're
Right.
doing that in order to get more taxes to tax on that higher amount.
Right. So let me, in layman's terms, because I kind of am a layman. So if my appraisal goes up from the county, my rate would go down in this scenario for neutral tax. So it would be inversely proportional.
Yeah. So also, I want to highlight something else that I mentioned before we started here. I also have a bill that increases the threshold for bonds. So it's important for us to remember that we owe local bond debt is $500 billion in Texas, and that's principal only. And you can look that up at the Texas Bond Review Board on their website, and it'll break it down by taxing entity. School bonds are $130 billion by itself, not including interest. We always like to complain about the total debt at the federal level. We are massively overspending here at the local level. For example, Birdville ISD, largest ISD in my district. Not the biggest fans of me, but that's okay.
That's okay.
Over 30% of their property tax revenue goes to service debt. It doesn't go to teachers. It doesn't go to the buildings. It doesn't help education. The maintenance and operation, the M&O portion, the school taxes have M&O, maintenance and operation, and INS, interest and sinking. That's the debt portion. The M&O, all of these stadiums that you see, the maintenance of those stadiums comes out of the same fund that pays teacher salaries. So we've got to start asking ourselves when it comes to spending, where are our priorities?
So in that, when anytime, and I think there's only been one time that I can remember where bonds don't pass. So it seems to me that anytime there's a bond on our ballot, like it feels like 100% of the time it passes. And even when they try that tricky language saying, oh, it means no new taxes, to your point, it doesn't talk about no new debt, right?
Yeah.
And so the voters go in and they're like, well, of course we want our schools to have more money, or of course we want this. Oh, it's not going to increase my taxes, but they don't understand the connection to the local debt. So I'm wondering, is there a way, and this might be completely madness, for us to require, when the local elections are happening, the language that describes the bonds to not be misleading? Why can't we have simple, clear language that describes those bonds?
We can. The thing is, so you know why we don't? For example, I had Fort Worth ISD lobbyists come into my office the other day. Get this, your tax dollars, or the Fort Worth ISD citizens, were paying for a lobbyist to come into my office and tell me the same BS that I can see on Twitter. And so the priorities need to change. I believe that we can easily change course. We just have to we got to start voting in new leaders. Back to the spending real quick. I actually had a school board member in my district say, well, David, it's the voters that approved the bond. Blame them. But the school boards that vote to put it onto the ballot, they have the fiduciary responsibility to not put crap on the ballot that doesn't belong there. They're the ones who understand how much debt it's going to cost, how long it's going to take to pay off, how much more property tax revenue is going to take to pay it off, etc. So once again, let's just continue to blame somebody else except for ourselves. But remember, I want you to remember this, 85% of incumbents win re-election. It's time to start changing our elected officials as much as we want to change our Cowboys coach.
So, to that point, what can, in regards to the bonds, where does the grassroots, where can the person that's listening to us at home, who's hearing you say about these bonds, where can they go to learn more about how bonds work, and what can they do individually? Like, do you need support for your bill? Do you need people calling their legislators saying, hey, this is an issue, I want this addressed? Like, what can they actually do at home?
Well, the first thing I think they need to do is go to the Texas Bond Review Board. Just put it in Google. That's how I found it. And look up your own taxing entities. Secondly, it has all the information about the bonds on there and how they work. Third, you got to call your elected officials. Call me if I'm your elected official. Call your state representative, but also call your school board president, your school board members. Call the city council. Call the mayor. Remember, everything, all politics is local, and everything starts at the local level. You know, we will flip on Fox News, and we will hear about the president or Congress, but the biggest impact of your community and in your life is the ones representing your community.
And that's where you're going to have the most impact. Your vote is most impactful the closer you get to your house. So that's awesome. Since we went right to schools, I'd like to talk about the Robin Hood Fund. You had recently put forth a bill about making sure that the money that is for the Robin Hood Fund is going to teachers exclusively, correct?
Yes, so teachers and classroom instructions. For example, with all of this wasteful spending, there are reports of a $20 million water park being built with Robin Hood funds. Now, ultimately, I would love to get rid of Robin Hood, but we've got to fund these underperforming or undersourced school districts. Somebody came to me with a bill idea about transparency. I was like, well, transparency is great, but that doesn't actually change anything. So my team and I got together, and we were like, hey, let's just limit what can be spent by Robin Hood funds. And so that's the goal, to continue to compress what Robin Hood funds can be used for.
Yeah, so that's kind of the theme of the day is transparency, radical transparency. I've heard, for instance, RFK talk about just kind of putting all the information out there and letting everyone see. Have you seen any information, or do you kind of have like some ballpark numbers on this much money is going into Robin? I think the reason that it's important, especially to people living in DFW, is we do have a lot of school districts that have to pay into Robin Hood, and so that's why it's so important to people around here. They should be focusing on it. Do you have any raw numbers on what you think or what you've seen of approximately this is wasteful to us or it's not going to the classroom?
Yeah, I actually have a whole list that I can provide you later. For example, Keller ISD is also in my district, and they have spent millions and millions and millions of dollars in Robin Hood, and we've got to make sure. So you can find out where Robin Hood funds are going, but it's like pulling an arm and a leg, right? You shouldn't have to file public information requests to find that information.
No.
And so my bill aims to make it simpler.
And I'm going to challenge you both. Can you explain to our viewers who may not know what the Robin Hood Fund is?
That's a great question. Yeah, I just kind of jumped into that one.
Okay. So basically, it's a certain amount of dollars. I don't know the exact funding formula, but it is taken out of a school district that somebody somewhere believes is too much money, and then they go ahead, like Robin Hood, and give it to somebody else. You know, Robin Hood stole from the rich, gave to the poor, and that's basically the same theory. However, Keller has a $20+ million shortfall, and they are expected to continue to pump millions into other school districts.
Okay, so I'm just going to break this down. So we are getting crushed under property taxes. My family, we're spending close to $30,000 a year on property taxes. And what you're telling me is that we've been told those property taxes are investing in our local community and paying for our local schools. But if I happen to be in a community that has a slush fund or has too much of monies could be pulled out of there, and now I'm not funding my local community. My tax dollars are now going across town or going to some other school district that I have nothing to do with.
100% correct.
Okay, so I'm curious on why people haven't, rose up against this, contacted their legislators, demanded that this be rescinded, repealed, stopped. Because I think that there's this common theme of the way our money is being spent. I think you said it earlier today, but we have a spending problem.
Well, I'm going to use a term that I hear all the time, and it really annoys me. It's for the kids. That's what we hear all the time. You don't want to pay more money out of your taxes. You don't want to send your taxes across the state. You don't care about kids. You don't care about teachers. That's not it. We care about them. That's why we want more fiscal responsibility. We want the money going into the classrooms and in teachers' pockets and not being wasted.
Yeah, personally, I have a lot of teachers in my family, and we talk about, hey, we're going to give the teachers a raise, we're putting more money, and it just seems that less and less percentages of the money that we send the school districts go to teachers, incentivizing people to become teachers, giving them raises, and ultimately having just more teachers throughout the school districts. So it's very interesting, where is all this money going?
Yeah, we spend, including federal money, Texas taxpayers fork over about $90 billion a year to school districts. Remember, half of the kids can't read at grade level. We've got some major problems here, and we've got to refocus our money and our efforts to improve education, because if we don't have a well-educated society, then we are going to crumble.
So you've got people in your life that are teachers.
Yes.
So riddle me this. I have friends who have littles, and they're getting emails from their teachers asking them to donate supplies for the classroom, like every day.
Sure.
And so what job, do any of us have ever heard of where you go to work and your employer is not providing you the tools that you need to be successful, and so either you have to fund your Xerox paper or your pens or your staplers? Is there any other profession out there besides, of course, us independent contractors? That's the life we live. But
Right.
with teachers, how is that even possible when we have such a surplus in our state?
It's a lot of money rolling around, $90 billion. And teachers really do. It's always, they're buying stuff constantly for their classroom. It is odd. That's a really good point. I can't really think of too many other, I wouldn't go work on a factory floor and have to show up with nuts and bolts
That's
to
right.
do it, but it's
That's my point.
yeah.
Where else?
That's a very
The
interesting
Army.
point.
Well,
The
okay,
Army.
okay,
Okay.
that's right.
Yeah.
You're right there. Yeah, but it's a very interesting conundrum that we have developed in our public school system. And I really think, to your point, we've got to do something. And of course, this is going to lead into the big question.
Yep.
This is the big question.
This is the big one, yeah.
The big question that I'm going to present to you this evening.
Okay.
You know it, you love it, you can't live without it. It's school choice.
Okay, so I will be honest with you. I was one of the last people to sign on to the school choice bill. I had my concerns, just like many other people do. But I started asking myself, why do we even want school choice? Why do people even want school choice? Why do people want the money to follow the child. And the truth is, performance should be the number one topic. I've had a lot of school districts, a lot of different teacher organizations come in. Everybody, the only thing they want to talk about is more money, more funding. Nobody ever says, you know what, we want to talk about more funding, and we want to talk about how we can make student performance better. So the truth is, it doesn't actually grow government. The school choice bill does not. Why? Because it's going through the comptroller, who already has a big impact on how money is dispersed in the state. I think that look, it is a power struggle right now, and giving parents more choice will likely have a significant impact in this state. Now, no bill is perfect, so I have said, I actually told the governor to this, if I support this bill, I want to make sure that I at least have some amendments that will be entertained. And so 2 of them that my team and I are working on, one of them would subject school choice program to the Sunset Commission. So it would be reviewed periodically to make sure that we know exactly what's going on. Does it need to be improved? Does it need to be cut? Does it need to be expanded? Etc. Because it's $1 billion program, and so we got to make sure that we're doing it right. Also, let's keep in mind, $90 billion a year is spent on public education, and everybody is freaking out about $1 billion. I know it's a lot of damn money. However, let's start putting things into context. $90 billion, half of the kids can't read, over half of the kids can't perform all of their subjects at grade level. $1 billion is the starting funds. Now, some people may say, hey, well, there's only 1.5% of the kids can go to use this so-called voucher. The thing is, we got to build the infrastructure. We don't have enough private schools. Hell, I would like everybody to be able to use the school choice program. It's going to take time. But I think that right now, this first school choice bill will build the foundation.
You know, I think what's interesting here is is calling it school choice. I think that's maybe where my sticky wicket is coming from, where it's not school choice. Like if you tell me school choice, I'm thinking about my foster daughter. And when I brought her here in our local community, I didn't want her to go to a particular middle school, so I wanted to take her to a different public school. And I was not allowed under the normal terms to do that. They said, no. J.L. Long said, absolutely not. You don't live in our area. However, because she was a foster child, she was technically homeless, and they made an exemption so that I could take her from one public school that was not performing well, and I could take her across the way and get her into another public school that would be safer for her. So I didn't have school choice in the public setting. So when I first heard the school choice, I'm like, oh, that means that I wouldn't have to use some special exemption for my foster kids. I could just take them to the school that they want to go to, because that's how my mind works. And then I read the bill. And then I'm like, oh, this is for children to be able to go to private school, right? So the choice is being able for that child, if they want to go from a public school to a private school, or homeschoolers can also utilize this, right, to go from homeschool to a private school. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Is this an accurate statement?
It is, and while I like the name school choice, I would rather actually call it the Parent Empowerment Act, because that is really what we're trying to do. Now, I just want you to think about this. Birdville and Keller, pretty decent school districts, and they're in my district.
Yeah.
Parents are not going to want to take their kids out of those schools.
Right.
The thing is, I'd be worried if I was Fort Worth ISD, Austin ISD, Dallas ISD, because as this program expands, those school districts are actually going to feel the heat.
And correct me if I'm wrong on this, that the rural communities, the smaller communities that don't have a private school in their area, that's also not going to be likely, right? So if you've got two working parents and they're in a rural community and the closest private school is 50 miles away, then that's really not an empowerment for them, because they just, to your point, it's only 100,000 kids, right?
However, let's be honest, those smaller school districts across the state are often not having the crap being taught in their schools. They don't have the issues that a lot of these bigger school districts are facing. And plus, the community pressure is a lot harsher. They will kick that teacher out of that school if they start going in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned that this is just kind of a starting place and the infrastructure. And that's been one of the biggest things I've seen on, for instance, like mom chat groups. Yes, I'm in mom chat groups. I'm watching. They're making the most noise about it. And one of their critiques, and it's fair, is that, okay, well, I look up the tuition at private schools we were talking about before we started. They're very expensive. So let's say it lands on $10,000 for a voucher. That's not really going to cover it. Well, that's just because the infrastructure hasn't been, there's not a strong marketplace for other options to come around. For instance, churches making private schools, like offshoots for private schools, and other entrepreneurs, developing private schools to service whatever that voucher number is. And I like how Texas, instead of just going full bore with it, is kind of putting their toe in the water and seeing how this thing can build out. So I think that's been very prudent of Texas to say, hey, we're going to empower parents, but we're going to do it in a really responsible way instead of just pulling the rug out from pretty much what we've had for 100 years or however long public school districts have really been around.
There are parents, there are lots of parents that I've spoken to. Let's say there's a $12,000 a year tuition. If they get a $9,000 or $10,000 voucher, they will be incentivized enough to go ahead and cover the rest. Now, one other thing that's really frustrating that I hear about school choice is it's for the rich parents, for the rich kids. And the truth is, I know some wealthy folks, and they don't need the voucher. And some families that are in poverty, they're not going to be able to take advantage of this either. This is for the middle class, and I think that's important. Now, I would like, basically, the way the bill is written is 500% of the poverty threshold. So it will empower a lot of variety of families.
Okay, so again, for our audience, convert that. What does that mean, 500%? So what does that equate for income?
I can't remember off the top of my head, but I think it's around 150,000 household income.
Okay, so you have
So
to make.
I will not qualify. My house.
So you have to make 150,000?
No. You cannot make above.
Okay.
Above.
Okay, so if you make more than 150,000, sorry, this isn't for you.
Yes.
Okay.
But I want to make sure that people understand this bill hasn't even been heard yet. It's been modified several times. It's going through the committee process. It will likely change in committee, and then it will go to the House floor. We will offer amendments. It will change then. It will be voted on, and then it will go to conference. So some senators and representatives will go ahead and find out what the final bill is, and then the governor will sign it. So it's a long process. So I encourage, and I ask people all the time, have you read the bill yet? So people want to email me and gripe and complain, and I appreciate it, right? I want as much feedback as I can get. But I'm like, where in the bill do you not like it? And they were like, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, what exactly is it that you don't like? And that's, and it seems like there's been really good responses to the things that people don't like. And just like with anything else, it's not everything's going to be perfect, right? There's going to be some give and take. But I think overall, even the people that oppose the school choice, even if you ask them, like, do you like the current system we have? Do you not think that there's any room for improvement other than, like you said, just give me more money? I think that kind of makes them stop and think for a second. Like, yeah, maybe this isn't the path for the future.
Yeah, so the governor has been pushing this pretty hard, and he's made some. He's allowed a lot of negotiation and allowed some changes. So he's really empowering the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate to really foster and craft this bill into something that our voters want.
And, and I can tell you from personal experience. So I want to speak to the people that are listening to this and they don't think that their voice matters, or they don't think that their phone call or their email matters. And the reason why this is so powerful is because, yes, I work on legislation for a living. I work with legislators for a living. However, I know what works and I know what doesn't work. And one of the things that that David just really hit on is be informed. So when you have a bill that you hear us throwing out bill numbers and you hear the sound bites on X or Insta or Facebook, I challenge you guys to read. And I know this sounds bizarre, but if you would take the time to read that bill or any bill that matters to you and give specific feedback to, number one, first and foremost, your elected official. There's a lot of bots out there and programs where they're blitzing you guys and you're getting emails from Oklahoma and Mississippi of these just blanket spam emails. But if you would step back and think strategically, build rapport and relationship with your elected official, even if you didn't vote for them. Even if you're like, I didn't vote for that person and they won, they still represent you. So send an email, right? And what he said, read the bill, and if you don't understand it, find somebody who does. Like there's groups, the local Dallas County Republican Party has a legislative priority committee. Most counties have their legislative priority committee at their local Republican Party, or friends, or reach out to us. A Better Dallas would love to just kind of, not that we give legislative advice, but we can help kind of explain the points. And the second thing to do is once you've started that relationship, right, with your legislator, the second thing I would challenge you to do is when David said that it gets assigned to a committee, right, and it gets heard in a committee. Like for the school choice bill, it would be public ed. Mm-hmm. Find out who those committee members are. You can go, that's all published on site. And reach out to those individual members as well. Like, if that's all you did this legislative cycle, pick a couple things that really matter to you and just did that, and you actually heard from more constituents, I've heard that that's an absolute game changer for offices. Unlike some of these movements where people are sending emails to all the legislators.
Yeah, those go straight into the archive box. Also, I would like to emphasize something. I appreciate everybody's emails and phone calls and texts. If you're going to send me 5 or 6 paragraphs, then we just don't have the time to read that. I need people to be short and concise and get to the point. I actually put my phone number on everything, and sometimes people are like, "Oh, you're sitting back and just playing on your phone on the House floor." No, I'm texting back and forth with constituents because their voice matters. And I will say also, just keep in mind, I'm a conservative. Tammy's a conservative. I know other conservatives. Some of them are going to agree with me on some legislation and not others. It doesn't mean that I sold out or I'm a traitor. It just means we have a different opinion. And so, respect. I will be honest with you. All of these public education organizations and teachers and so forth that came into my office being completely rude and demanding, if they really wanted to have more input in the school choice legislation, they would come with respect. I have actually talked to representatives who are like, I actually talked to one representative walking to the House floor the other day. I was like, I'm ready to get this school choice legislation over with. And he said, the way the teachers are treating me, I'll vote for it 4 or 5 times. And so respect goes such a long way. You don't want to push somebody in the wrong direction because you were disrespectful to them.
And I have encouraged our grassroots activists, I have said this until I've been blue in the face, that when you walk into an office, whether it's your elected official, whether you agree with them or not, whether you voted for them or not, walking in an office and saying, hey guys, thank you so much for what you do. When I start an email, it's to any office, it's thank you. Because they're working hard, whether it's aligned with my values or not, they're still working hard. I think that when you talk about building rapport, I've also watched offices where activists have come in and they were very excited and rude and disrespectful to the staff. Now I'm telling you, these are free nuggets. I'm not charging anybody for this. These are free nuggets. Build relationship and rapport with your representative and their staff. When you are rude or disrespectful to that staff, the staff is what makes that office run so smoothly. The staff is the heartbeat. The staff is everything. And if you go in and you're disrespectful to the staff, because maybe you had a meeting, I can't tell you how many times I've had a meeting with a rep, and I get there and they're like, oh, Tammy, sorry. I'm like, I get it, they're working, and so I meet with either the chief of staff or the director of policy or the person in the office that is responsible for that particular topic of legislation, and I'm texting with them, they give me feedback, they give me input, they give me insight. Do not discredit or discount or disrespect the staff. That is my number one battle cry when I'm working with grassroots activists, because they want to go in and they want to speak to the elected. Well, there is one elected in your district, and how many people do you represent?
Roughly 200,000.
Okay. One guy, 200,000 people. What would it look like if you continued to cultivate relationship with their staff and understand it's the staff that's the gatekeeper to him? And the staff will give him counsel and advice. So, folks, I think there needs to be a paradigm shift. We all saw what happened the other night with on Trump's speech.
Yes.
And there's two different approaches. There's an effective approach and there's ineffective. I think we as a country are ready to shift into, let's start being effective. And it's not about who's right, but what's right. And I think you'll see more movement than you expect.
Yeah, that's solid advice.
Solid.
Definitely get more with the carrot than the stick, it feels like.
Yeah, so people can curse me up and down all day long. But the moment they disrespect my staff, who many of them picked up their stuff from across the state and moved to Austin to service our office. I mean, we're there before 8 many days, and I've actually stayed there till 11. And, the days are going to continue to get later and later, and my staff is running on fumes some days. So they're working their butts off, and I need them focused, and so I don't disrespect the staff.
Speaking of working your butt off, the legislature meets for 140 days every 2 years, pretty much, without special sessions. Lately, it seems like there's been several 4-day weekends and
5.
and 5-day. So that sounds like good government work. And I'm just wondering, with such a tight schedule, what is the game plan why are they doing this? Why does this keep happening?
So I actually asked the speaker that on the back mic, and I said, is it tradition to waste this much time? And the truth is, yes, it is. And when you go to certain legislators, you ask them, why are we doing this? And they'll say, oh, it's conservative. Because it is a tradition. It is what they're used to. I expected when I got in here, it would be like a deployment. I'd go every few weekends, go see my kids, or they'd come down, and my wife come down. But routinely, we are there for like an hour or hour and a half on the House floor, and all we're hearing is recognitions of people in the up in the gallery.
Yeah.
And I want to make it clear though. Let's be fully transparent here. A 5-day weekend does not mean 5 days off. What it means is the 5-day weekends that we were taking means that we were not on the House floor, we were not hearing bills, we were not processing bills. People will still be talking about their bills with constituents and with each other and trying to garner support. And that's cool, but we can always do that. We need to be having committee hearings as soon as possible. The Senate continues to outshine us every single session. They're laughing at us in the Senate. They're like, man, the House doesn't do any work. Really, we need to be working 6 and 7 days a week just to catch up. Remember, 8,000 bills are going to be filed this session.
Wow.
About 1,700 are going to be voted on. And the whole process needs to change. I actually have a constitutional amendment that allows so when they say, oh, we can't pass certain bills till 60 days, everything in the Texas House of Representatives can be suspended. It takes certain different voting thresholds, but everything can be suspended. I have a constitutional amendment that removes all limitations. So it allows each chamber to operate independently as they see fit. But remember, the most important vote that we're going to take this session was for Speaker of the House.
Do you want to get into that?
I will say that I voted with the Republican caucus to nominate Representative David Cook for Speaker of the House. And, there was a lot of gamesmanship. And what's crazy is we empowered the Democrats more than we ever have. Okay, let me rephrase. I didn't. Many of my colleagues empowered the Democrats more than they've ever had under a Republican majority. We're even giving $3 million now to vice chairmanship Democrats. The whole thing is a ruse. And it's all because we selected the wrong leadership in the Texas House.
Do you think that's part of the strategy to possibly get more bills to the door, or fairness, or something of that sort, or do you just think it's straight up like House of Cards type situation?
It's about power,
Yep.
right? Look, I'll never be speaker, but it's a pretty cool gig if you've got it, right? And some people consistently will do whatever it takes to get the votes to do that. I actually have a bill, a constitutional amendment that was filed today to change the Speaker of the House to a 4-year elected statewide office, because he is one of the most powerful people in the state of Texas. We the people should have a say. I also don't like the city manager form of government. The city manager is the most important, most powerful person at the city level, and they're not even elected by the people.
Right.
So you touched on it, and I'm going to ask you to dive in before we wrap up. Tell our viewers how much power, like what is the role of the speaker and how much power do they actually have? Because there is a sentiment where people were like, well, does it really matter? And from the outside, people may not understand exactly the role and responsibility of a speaker.
Well, the Speaker of the House has lots of power. And Number one, most important power that they have is setting the tempo for the entire Texas House of Representatives, how it functions, everything. For example, they can appoint the parliamentarian. Speaker Dade Phelan appointed a parliamentarian that worked under the Obama administration. The parliamentarians and the Democrats often work together to kill Republican conservative legislation. The chair or the Speaker of the House also sets committee assignments for the most part, right? So we get a seniority card. Everybody has a seniority number, and you can use your seniority to recommend to the Speaker what committees you would like to be on and so forth. But they assign committees. The truth is, they have their finger on every piece of important legislation. For example, the first 150, I believe it is, House bills were all, the numbers 1 through 150 were all designated for the Speaker. And so whatever the Speaker wants, the Speaker gets. Calendars Committee in years past has been notorious for holding up and killing key conservative legislation, and speakers of the House have always appointed the polar opposite of a grassroots candidate to that position.
Very interesting. There's a lot of moving parts that I don't think that unless you're down there or talking to your representative, that you would find out. So, I mean, I do a fair bit of reading, but the fact that you just said, well, just because it says that we're taking a 5-day break doesn't mean that y'all are, down on drinking or anything like that. You guys are still working. You wouldn't find that in any of the articles that I read, that you guys were still working on legislation internally.
Some of us are.
Oh, okay.
Some of them get on the airplane and head back.
I got you.
Head back, like literally they get whiplash. They get out of that chamber so fast.
That's right. And those are the ones that I can never schedule meetings with, so I know who they are.
Well, you got to beat traffic.
I know.
Okay, speaking of traffic, we got toll roads. Living in North Texas, DFW area, I think on my taxes I just filed was over $1,500 in tolls that I put on there. And that's not even a lot, really, compared to some people. You had recently put forth a bill. Do you want to tell us about that and how you think that we can handle the toll road issue facing DFW?
Yes, so I am not the person who came up with this idea. Many legislators before have authored bills to end toll roads in one way or another. My bill would eliminate toll roads after they are paid off. Now, somebody might say, well, where's all the money going to come from? The truth is, in the last biennium, we raised the state budget by over $70 billion. It's approximately $500 million to take care of the toll roads annually. We can cover that. We just got to stop wasting so much money. I don't have a lot of toll roads in my district, but I have a lot of constituents that have to travel all over the place. And so it is a problem. Small businesses, it affects them. Small families. The pricing transparency, there is none, right? It is literally highway robbery.
Yes.
And it doesn't alleviate traffic. I grew up here in Dallas, and when I moved back to Texas back in 2015, I got on the by the high five, the tollway.
Yeah.
And
Tex Express.
It's never packed, right? Open that up. Get some people off at 635. Yeah. The whole tollway system has been a failure. And, it's one of many bills that we need to take care of. We no longer need to ever lease to foreign companies again. TxDOT runs about 25 tollways. And so this is an important piece of legislation. But this is just one piece of the entire let's stop taxing Texans, right? Because this isn't for roads. This is a tax.
It's definitely a tax. The bonds are a tax. The toll road is a tax. Everything is a tax. And it's like eventually it's going to really become where Texas is not a great place to move because it's just so expensive to live here with all the different things stacking up on top of each other. Besides that, is there anything that you would like to get into before we wrap up here?
Yeah, so my favorite bill this session is called the Save James Act. So if you don't know, there was this man named Jeff Younger whose child, James Younger, at 9 years old, was being socially transitioned against his father's will. The mother is a complete idiot, and she and the teachers and the counselors all supported this 9-year-old boy dressing up as a girl. And long story short, now the child is older. He'll be in California. The courts have ruled in a couple of years he can be castrated, and the Texas House of Representatives failed him. Long story short, I have authored a bill called the Save James Act in honor of James Younger to stop the social transition of children. SB 14, Senate Bill 14, last session, outlawed the surgical transitions of children, which is horrific. However, that is literally less than 10% of the whole transition movement. And so this would actually criminalize the psychological child abuse that is placed on these children, whether it's pronouns, dressing up on and clothes of the opposite gender. You know, some people have said, well, what if my boy wears lipstick? No, of course, we have thresholds in the bill. It's got to be prolonged, and it's got to play a psychological effect on that child. Whatever you do as an adult, have at it, right?
Right.
But these children, they are impressionable, they are vulnerable, and some sick and twisted doctors, counselors, parents, teachers, etc. are participating in this, and I believe they should go to jail.
Hear, hear. And if there's anything, of course, that we can do to help support that, that's, all things protecting children is near and dear to my heart. And we've got to close that loophole 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, thank you so much. Mr. Lowe, thank you for coming out and speaking directly to your constituents. Again, it's just another form of communication with them. Of course, we'll put your information down below. And with that, I hope that you like and subscribe. And we got a couple more interviews coming up, and we'll be going down to Austin here shortly too. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks so much. Good night.
Thank you.